Hi, everyone. Welcome. Wait for our artists to sign on. Thank you for joining us via Facebook Live. I'm Nicole Rademacher. I'm the founder and director of Acogedor. And this is our third in a series of 5 conversations with the artists that have work that is part of the home exhibition at Acogedor. Sorry, I have a little bit of extraneous noise going on as it's dinner time and I have a small child running around outside. So I want to thank everyone for being here. I'm really excited to have this conversation with Neena and Ken and Laura and Jessica. So before we get started, I do want to take this moment, first of all, to remind everybody who is in the United States and has the ability to vote. And if you either don't have the ability or you don't live in the States, if you know somebody who lives in the States who can vote, encourage them to vote. I also want to let you guys know that we also have Instagram takeovers that are happening right now. So at acogedor.space, Kayla Tang and her collaborators, Luca and Chuck, are taking over for the next couple days. And looks like we got a few technical difficulties going on. Right. Here we go. I was wondering what happened to everybody. Laura, are you there? You should be here soon. Oh, there. Okay, great. Sorry about that, guys. So now we have our artists. I feel a little more grounded here. All right, so Kayla and company are taking over the Instagram right now, and then Luciana Abait will be taking it over starting on Thursday. I also want to let you guys know that we have a participatory performance by artist Andrea Nush, and that'll be happening on Sunday, also broadcast here on Instagram Live. See the website if you'd like to participate. So it's you participate via Zoom, you sign up and then we send you an email, but you can also just tune in. It should be really interesting. It's gonna be about 30 minutes and then we're gonna do a discussion afterwards. So yeah, so let's get going with our artists. Again, Ken, Neena, Jessica, and Laura, and they all have work that's in the connections theme, or I think as I wrote in the curatorial statement, it's more of like the essence, different essence that each of the works kind of gave off. And so they will be sharing their work and their experiences and who they are as artists. First, I'm going to introduce Ken, and Ken's going to talk a little bit about his work, and I'll show it to you, and then we'll kind of make the rounds through. So say hi, Ken.
Hello, everybody. Hi. Thank you for having me on, Nicole. Yeah, my name's Kenneth Kinsley, and I have a piece in here. They just don't know how to live in the space is the title, and a little bit about me. I'm an artist living in Sherman Oaks. I've been working for LA Unified School District for about almost 20 years. And this is my second year actually as an elementary art teacher, going from school to school. And been in the Los Angeles area for almost 30 years. I just started thinking about that a few minutes ago. Can't believe that. And just been doing art for a really long time. I was a graphic designer for a few years before going into education, and just really got seriously into painting probably about 4 or 5 years ago. I've been doing it my whole life, but decided to finally, do something with this, if you will. And yeah, I use a lot of the signs as in my work as like a metaphor for social media and the statements that we can make, whether they're true or not. Just, we all have these signposts that we put out there in the world, and a lot of that now is social media. And at the beginning of quarantine, I was watching a documentary on Julian Schnabel called A Private Portrait, which, by the way, if you don't have Canopy, it's a free streaming service that you can get through pretty much all the libraries. And if you can get that, it's awesome because they have a ton of amazing documentaries. But I was watching this one on there at the beginning of quarantine, and his son Olmo was talking about the space that they live in New York. It's called Palazzo Chuppi, and he built out this. And as you can imagine, with Julian Schnabel, he doesn't do anything small. So he added like 6 stories onto this huge building, and it's massive, and it's kind of like a combination between a factory and a museum. And Olmo, when he was growing up, his friends would come over, and he said about it, they don't know how to really live in the space because it felt odd to them. And that kind of struck me because like our homes have now in a lot of ways become odd to us. And in the sense that, these spaces that used to be just a private space for us, now we're doing stuff like this, and we're on Zoom and Facebook Live and anything like that. So in places where we would have friends come over, now there's nobody there. So it kind of struck me as like kind of relevant to, even though he wasn't talking about that, and the documentary was from years before our situation now. It just kind of happened to kind of mesh with that. So that was kind of the impetus for this piece.
Great, thank you, Ken. I'm gonna stop.
Thank you.
And so Jessica Oler is another artist who will be talking with us today. And I'm going to share her work so she can talk a bit about that. All right, all yours. Hold on, Jessica, it muted you. Let me unmute you.
Sorry about that. So my name is Jessica. It's very nice to be here. So this piece, Big Bodies, was the first piece that I began for this paper on canvas series during the stay-at-home order. With this series specifically, my centralized focus is Black geography and all of the histories that come along with that. I'm a conceptual artist. I generally work with paper. As of late, I've been back into film photography, which is wildly exciting for me. Digital is fantastic, but I'll never forget my first film photography class way back in high school. Yeah, this piece I'm really happy about, and I'm so glad that it's able to breathe in some way, shape, or form outside of my vicinity. Yeah, that's pretty much that on that. I have a background in sociological research, and that plays a heavy role in my art practice. I find that those things are very much continuously interrelated with how I function in this world at large, and specifically when I am doing research. And I find that the meeting of those modes really does allow me to reach even further and dig even deeper into the concepts that I'm inspired by, that I'm working with. So that's pretty much me.
Thanks, Jessica. All right, and next, Laura Paul. Say hi, Laura.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura Paul.
I'm going to share my screen so that you can see her work. Is that there?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So this is my piece, I Can't Wait for World to Be Reborn. And I actually created this piece very early on in the shutdown. I think it was probably the last week of March. And I made it in a single day. And I work primarily as a writer, but especially in the last year, I've been especially interested in the aesthetics of language and of words. And I think in this time period, like Ken referenced, we're doing everything on screens and, you know, very digitally. It's interesting to start to think about what texture our language takes because of that, especially with, like, you know, if we're losing handwriting, or if, you know, we're just seeing this kind of standardized type all the time. And for this piece, I was really interested in that juxtaposition of image and then the communication of language. And I started to get really meditative on this symbol or shape of the drop as it related to the pandemic, because so much was talking about, you know, the you know, coughing, the droplets. There's a lot of discussion about droplets and how that's a bodily process that we all share. Also that they were talking about it being a blood-borne disease, but then also in the piece with some of the kind of thoughts or kind of sentences or fragments that are seen, there's also so much sadness and grief. So tears also being a very universal experience. And then also thinking about how, you know, as it relates to the body, the pandemic is hitting different bodies in such different ways. So this really fraught kind of connection between a shared experience, but then how wildly, you know, different people's experiences have been during the pandemic, and how uneven it's and disproportionate it's people's experiences are towards one another. So that's the mindset, and that's kind of the big things that have been floating around as we've all been trying to figure out what's going on, but that went into the thought behind this piece.
Great, thanks, Laura. Stop sharing. And then we have Neena Wang. Say hi, Neena.
Hi, everybody.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen and show you her work as well.
I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Neena Wang. I'm a mixed media artist. I'm currently based in Los Angeles, but I'm originally born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee, and went to school in St. Louis as well. Yeah, so this piece is titled Never Alone. It's an oil painting that I did, and I actually started this painting back in like January. It just like kind of sat on my easel for many months. And I was really just kind of obsessed with like the idea of a bathroom as a room in your house. So this is a painting of my actual bathroom in my house that I share with two other people. And I think one day my housemate will, just without telling anyone, put this, it's a framed photograph on the wall of a security camera. And the security camera is like basically pointing directly at you while you're sitting on the toilet. And I just thought it was so humorous. We never talked about it. No one in the house mentioned it at all. But every single time I go and sit on the toilet, I just stare at the security camera. And it's kind of like just a hilarious, kind of like dark, humorous thing. And I was just thinking about like the bathroom as a room that people really like try to ignore. People are not, they're not like proud of their bathroom. It's sort of like that room that you go to like do dirty things or like to clean yourself, that no one wants to like talk about, no one wants to confront. And I was kind of, I was sort of all over the place, but I was sort of thinking, I was reading the Marie Kondo book at this time, thinking about this idea of like tidying and cleaning, and how cleaning is like a sacred act, and how you should never ignore the things that you own and the things in your house. You should really embrace them and make sure that they all bring you joy, including your toilet and your bathroom. And so it sat on my easel for many months. And then during the early days of the pandemic, I kind of, I was spending so much time in my house, and I just used this bathroom all the time, every day. Never saw another bathroom outside of my house. And it was just such an act of like close observation to paint the interior of my bathroom in my bedroom of this house. It became, so many elements of it became even more like funny or potent or like meaningful. Like I'm so deeply familiar with the embossment pattern of the toilet paper in my bathroom after painting it. And after this whole, hilarious kind of dark scandal about toilet paper in the early days of the pandemic, I'm so intimately familiar with the texture of this Monstera leaf, with the like porcelain texture of my toilet and the way that the handle shines light, all these things. And then just thinking about like the irony of having the security camera, but it's a fake security camera, right? It's an image of a security camera. It's a signifier of something that surveils you in sort of like the most private part of your life, where you truly are always isolated. And just thinking about like the title Never Alone is sort of like a jab at, even when you're in the bathroom sitting on the toilet, you're really not alone. Someone's watching you, whether it's maybe you're surveilling yourself, or maybe somebody's surveilling you through your phone, or so maybe someone's looking through your window at you. You never know. It sort of became this like humorous kind of like dark painting.
Thank you, Neena.
Yeah.
It's always so wonderful to hear you guys talk about your work. I mean, you all sent in your artist statements, but being able to see it and hear you guys talk, you just kind of see all these different nuances that you didn't see. So I'm gonna go from yours and kind of segue into some of the topics that we had discussed in our prep meeting. And it's this idea of safety. And I think in yours, Neena, with the security camera, and then this idea of that bathroom being maybe the only place in your house that you're really safe because you're alone. I don't know. But I wanted to pose it to the rest of you, and maybe Jessica wants to respond about how safety or comfort factors into your work that's in the exhibition.
So for me, unprotected Black female flesh is a centralized thought in my practice. So for me, I'm either directly or indirectly thinking about this idea of safety. For this piece, for Big Bodies, I was thinking about the Middle Passage, enslaved people, what that looks like, what that feels like, the reality of that relationship to water, which is the direct image that's depicted. I lost my train of thought. What was the directed question again? Sorry.
It was just about safety.
Okay, yes. So yeah, so that's in, safety in relation to my work. That's how I feel about that in relation to this piece. Again, I was thinking about Black geography, water, and the Middle Passage. So yeah, so that's pretty much that. And when it comes to the stay-at-home order, and whatever home may look like for you, it definitely begs the question of safety, because the reality is, for a variety of reasons, not everyone is safe at home, right? And that directly affects your every moment, every mood, every feeling, your next step. So to me, safety is this constant. It's this constant thing, whether it's in my face or not, but it absolutely is in direct relation to how I move about the world. So.
Yeah, I see that in your piece, Jessica, of like the fluidity of safety with like the fluidity of water. Like you're never, it's not like a state that you're in. It's just a constantly moving, like you're in the ocean. Sometimes you may be in the same body of water, but you may feel like you're drowning, or you may feel like you're swimming, or you may feel like you're floating, or, you know, you may feel like you're thriving, dying, all these things. It can all happen at once in this one body of water.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're all asking ourselves these questions, like our safety is really being violated on like an extreme level. Like I think people that, even if you live alone, but especially if you live with other people, you know, I think everybody's had really difficult confrontations, scenarios, conversations about safety, about like, how can I make you feel safe if I live in the same space as you? And sometimes those conversations have gone south. I've definitely been in positive and negative conversations in that regard. And it's interesting that all of our safety is so interwoven now. Safety, and we're realizing safety is not an individual act. It's a communal act.
Absolutely. And it definitely always has been. You know what I mean? Like it's always been this communal, interrelated conversation, like whether it's acknowledged or not. And now, you know, with the virus and with this like civil rights movement happening and with the fires, it's just, you know, it's just up there, it's just like this upsurge of everything. And that everything isn't necessarily like, oh, that's new. Like these things have been ever present, maybe not the virus per se, but it's a lot. So, and hopefully all of us can come together and see that we need each other. We need a lot of things, but we do need each other. So.
Do you guys feel that like you find safety in connection, or do you find safety in disconnection? Or it's probably a spectrum. But just as thinking about your works in the show and this idea of connections, and something that some people feel that they've lost, being in the quarantine, and now with the fires, and maybe rejuvenated in a way with the civil rights. I hate to say unrest, but it's like it's unrest, but it's still like people are more awakened to what's going on. Yeah, I don't know if you guys had any thoughts about that with your lives and experiences, or in your work, or in your practice.
Yeah, I can speak on that. For me, I kind of had a funny experience with the shutdown because I live by myself, and as a writer, I spend a lot of time working on my own. And I thought it was something that made me feel really safe, but it kind of paradoxically inverted. Like I felt like I had so much isolation before the shutdown, and so it was interesting. I mean, you know, it's very privileged that I had kind of been trained in that already when other people had not had to spend so much time solo like I had. But with my piece, like I was specifically thinking so much about that interconnection. Yeah, and like it happens in so many ways. It can be physically connected to people through communication, kind of in a more spiritual sense, or whatever it is. But I think it was something I had already believed, but just brought to such a heightened sense of I wasn't really feeling safe knowing that I had unhoused neighbors that were completely unsafe, or, you know, whatever the experiences were around me, I couldn't really understand why I would be safe, or I just wouldn't feel safe knowing that in my neighborhood, which I'm very active in, that there's violence going on, or like Jessica was speaking before, like some people aren't safe at home, or some people don't have homes. So just really, you know, feeling a little bit of hope, I guess, that we're realizing that like and just how enmeshed we are completely in each other's lives.
I think for me, like this whole thing made me realize how much I didn't think about any of this stuff before. Everything was, whether it really was safe or whatever, you were able to kind of put things on a back burner and just go about, and then it's suddenly, you know, you can't even go to the store without, you know, not feeling safe, or for any number of things like we've talked about. So I think, you know, like you said, it's an awakening. Like this stuff's always kind of been there, whether it's this virus or something else. There's always been health, you know, issues looming. There's always been an environmental crisis looming that, you know, we knew of, but you could still go about things on a normal level. We always knew that there was a racial problem, but you could, you know, for a lot of people, it could, you, for those who were able to, they could put it on the back burner. And I think a lot of us now are realizing this shouldn't have been on the back burner. So.
I think I'm realizing, and maybe as a collective, we're all realizing that safety is truly an illusion. Like, you can never really be fully safe. There's always danger, constant, and uncertainty is just dangerous. So for me, it's like I try to think about, it's not necessarily like how safe I feel in a current moment, but more about like what kind of tools do I have to utilize if something happens? What kind of like people do I have around me? What kind of environment am I in? Like sort of like that like backup plan, or that like what would my response be to something? Having to balance like being so hyper aware of that and being sort of like ignorant to a point of comfort. I was thinking about that with the painting too, of like, well, you know, we're always under attack of surveillance. I think we all know that now in the 21st century, that like this is such a threat to us, but we don't think about it 24/7. So it's sort of funny to like be confronted with that in such a like physical way, to like see a security camera, or you know, when you walk into a grocery store and you see your face on the security camera, those are like confrontations and reminders to be on guard, that to say that you're not safe, to say that you're being watched. And I'm just thinking about like other reminders that we have in other ways, whether it's like disease, whether it's environmental disaster, whether it's, you know, this or that threat.
It's just, it's, you know, we're all, and it is all connected. And I think that even like, just, I think it's easy to forget that. But we are all connected in one way. And I think that that's a fantastic thing. I think that that's, you know, I don't want to say it's a fantastic tool, because that feels kind of, I don't know, less heartfelt, but we are all connected, and connection is so vitally important. You know, a lot of my other friends who are artists, I mean, I miss them. Like, we miss each other. It's like we've been pulled apart because stay-at-home order stuff, and on top of the fact, a lot of us are all across the country. But being able to speak to each other, to share our work, to have those conversations, to talk about what's been going on, because a lot of us, you know, aren't okay at most emotionally. But, you know, it's like these moments, literally right now, help me to feel and see that, like, we are still here. There is still a pulse, and we need each other. And there's so much amazing work being done by amazing people. And for me, knowing that and feeling that and remembering that helps to really keep me present and grounded, but also moves me forward, which is really, when it comes to this series, like, that realization, beginning this series during all this chaos, like, woke me back up. You know what I mean? Does that make sense to y'all? Like, it woke me back up. Like, this is what I love to do. Like, I'm an artist. This is what I do. And I can't, despite it all, I can't let these outside sources stop me from the thing. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We need that now more than ever.
absolutely, right?
What?
That's what I think. Like, regardless of whatever conversations you're in your practice, we can't, like, stop, in my opinion. Like, I understand that there are plenty of reasons to stop. No, this is definitely not a moment of pointing any fingers. I understand that deeply and truly. But also, like, this is where folks who are hopefully on the right side of history are like, no, we're present, we're here, we're working. You know, whatever that work may be, we're doing the thing. We aren't going to stop. Our hearts are beating. We're still standing.
I mean, like, you know, my painting and your photograph, none of these things on here are gonna, like my painting, your picture, these are not gonna be the things that solve it, but they're gonna be something that helps somebody have a discussion and puts a thought in their head, and that is moving forward, and that is connecting.
Absolutely. I totally agree. You know, I think about some of my favorite artists, like Adrian Piper, and Anna Mendieta, how it's one of the things why it's like it is about the things that they created, but it's also about, like, their presence, what they did, the decisions that they made. You know what I mean? Like, of course, their work is so important, but they did the thing, and they continue to do the thing, and those behaviors, those choices, their lives, that continues to change the world. So maybe that's just because they're like my favorites. Maybe it's just like, you know, but that idea of those other people that greatly influence how you walk in the world, you know, those are things that keep you connected, and those are things that make you feel safer, and those are things that resonate in your home where you live and resonate in your body, which is another site of home. So if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have had to ask ourselves, like, what would we want to be doing at the end of the world? Because this really is the end of the world. Like, it feels like it. And in another way, like, many groups have been asking themselves that for decades, for centuries, right? Like, they've just had to, for many people, the world already ended. For certain marginalized groups, say if you're an indigenous person in the US, you know, they talk about like, this is like post-apocalypse that they're living in. But yeah, like for me, especially though we all live in California, you know, fires are raging all around us. So how do we choose to spend our time? And it's interesting that a lot of people have turned to art and creative outlets instead of like, you know, having to do something that has rewards 30 years from now. You do something that has reward right now, that feels good in your body, that keeps you sane at home. And that connects you to other people too. So you can share this work. I was thinking kind of like back to what you were saying earlier, Jessica, your piece, like when I look at it, I just like, I have a very specific reaction to this body of water, this figure in the middle of this like churning water. And I imagine like so many people must have different reactions to your work, whether, you know, maybe they have a fear of water, maybe they're really, really connected to water. Some people might look at that and feel like they're drowning. It's funny, like we all, how we're talking about like safety in home is not about your environment. It's more like the context that you find yourself in this environment. Like say we're all in the same body of water. Some people know how to swim. Some people do not know how to swim. Some people have like a life raft. Some people have a boat. Some people have a yacht with 1,000 life rafts on it that they choose to hoard and not give to other people who are drowning, right? This is really the situation that we're in. And right now the water is extremely, we're like in a freaking tsunami right now, like a hurricane. And so like we're all trying not to drown, and some people have different tools, to say the least.
Right, to say the least. Yes, it's wild, like for our generation. I mean, I was born in the late 80s, you know, and one thing that I like that like kind of keeps me standing is I just think back to like ancestors, you know what I mean? Like I have no idea what it's like to live through the Jim Crow South, right? Like I don't have any idea of what it was really like to march in the 1960s, right? Like I don't, dang it, I lost my train of thought again. What was my point? I just try to reach back and think about those people that lived through those moments. Like I couldn't imagine. I couldn't even try to imagine what that was like, when I know for my generation, regardless of ethnic background, it's like, we're like, what the fuck is going on? And whether we know what's going on or not, because I have, you know, but it's like, what, maybe it's further like, what are we supposed to do? Like, what's the right thing to do? You know, do we actually have the tools, but we're just like rightfully so uncomfortable? And I know there's so many people doing amazing work, but it's a lot. It does feel like a catastrophe. Maybe it is a catastrophe. You know what I mean? Maybe it is a tsunami, but I just try to, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to like hold on to the thing to find a resolution and keep it productive, because fear will stop you like dead in your tracks, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So,
I've been thinking a lot about that, like ancestral knowledge.
yeah.
Like there have been studies and people generally agree that trauma is carried in your DNA. It's physically like passed on from generation to generation. These memories are embedded in our blood, literally. So I think about my ancestors, and actually I'm based in LA, but I'm currently in Fremont because my grandmother passed away last Saturday. We went to her funeral yesterday. And I've been thinking so much about, she was an artist. She was the only other artist in my family, really. She was a painter, and she, you know, went through so much in China and lived through a million catastrophes, but chose to express her worldview through calligraphy and through painting. And I carry her with me. I carry that with me now.
That's great. That's so vital. It's so important. I'm sorry for her passing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So there's a term for that's true. Trauma is passed down from generation to generation. It's called transgenerational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I recently found out about it, but it's lovely that it's like this very kind of intuitive thing for at least the both of you to talk about. When now there's more and more science and research around how trauma is passed down from generation to generation, and also how caregivers will pass trauma down while even though they're trying to shield their children from the stress and whatever, they're still passing trauma down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I wonder, it's funny that they chose to study trauma. But what about joy? Like, I imagine that we pass joy down as well, and survival. So many things that scientists have not necessarily proven yet, but I think many groups around the world already know and are maybe smarter than those scientists.
Mm-hmm. That's funny you say that, because I was just thinking that. I was thinking of, I think it's great that you brought that up, Nick, for sure, and I think about elders in my community and all the joy and resilience and information and knowledge that they pass down, and how really, I'm standing on their shoulders, like despite it all, like, yeah, it is hard, I do face challenges that are a lot, but I know for a fact that there's been so much love and joy and community and connections that have been passed down. And I'm so thankful for that, because that's how you thrive. That's how they thrive. They had their elders, and those elders had their elders. And it's just, this beautiful wave of a thing. So.
One of the things I've been reflecting on, I feel like you've brought this up, Jessica, is just with generational differences, how our tools are so different in terms of technology. Yeah. And it's interesting, thinking back on like how did people live through like all these crazy time periods, but also like what our relationship is going to be to like the internet and the way we're sharing and communicating. Like obviously we're doing this on Zoom, and there's like lovely perks to all this, like you're saying, your community of support of like having friends all over the country or world. Mm-hmm. And it's also interesting, like in Neena's piece, that camera is a threat, right? So it's like, are these tools, are they threats? Are they violent? I mean, I think that's something, I'm just interested in what people's experiences are, because I think there's such kind of double-edged experiences with just what our new capabilities are through technology, and whether or not that's bringing us together, or if it's, creating really unsafe conditions.
When you said double-edged, that's exactly, double-edged sword was the analogy I was about to say. Like just yesterday, I ended up finding somebody, he found me actually on Facebook, who grew up 2 doors down from me, and I haven't seen him in over 30, 40 years probably. And we were able to catch up on, Facebook Messenger, and it was great. He was the guy that got me into music. I would go over to sleepovers and try to memorize all the band names on his albums. But, then you also go on Facebook and there's so much misinformation out there and people spreading, the falsehoods that are helping to bring us down. So it's like that push and pull between, it makes me think about television. When they invented TV, they thought it would pipe all the finest operas into people's homes, and it ended up being mainly for game shows. So you never know what's going to happen with this stuff.
Yeah.
Or the connection's always a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah, technology has absolutely changed everything. For the better and for the worse. What are your
I've been thinking recently, oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you what your thoughts were. Yeah.
I was thinking about like this like reimagining of connection that we're all doing right now. We're really like confronting what it means to be connected. And I've been thinking about like how we have this hierarchy of connection, that like digital communication or communication that's mediated through technology is somehow lesser than, or somehow like less human than physical, direct, face-to-face communication. But really, like when you're face-to-face with someone, that also is a mediated connection. You're mediated through this physical, three-dimensional environment. You're mediated through this language that we all know to be English, or mediated through like body language, all these things. And in some ways, like, is that better? Is that more connecting than a digital way of connecting? There's this artist here in Los Angeles. Her name is Jennifer Moon, and I love this piece that she did. It's like a performance, like almost you can't even call it a performance, but her family goes to therapy. They go to family therapy every week with a therapist, and she had this idea to all create avatars on this like computer generated like simulation, kind of like The Sims. And they would go to therapy in person every week, and then they would go to this simulated digital avatar therapy as like a supplement. And she actually like recorded all of this, and put it all together as a video for her piece. So it was really interesting that like that digitally mediated therapy, they like made so many more strides because they didn't have to like sit in a room together. And we can all like have our own opinions on why that might be, that people feel maybe more vulnerable, more like open to being vulnerable over digital form. And she also like she uses this avatar, even this is pre-pandemic too, to like date people. And she'll if there's somebody that she's interested in quote unquote real life, she would invite them to meet as an avatar. And she found that like when you're kind of shed of this like attachment to your physical body, you don't have to feel self-conscious about like how you look that day, like how you're maybe if you're sick, or maybe you just are having a bad day, or whatever, what you're wearing, you have so much more control over in this digital space, that you can actually be like a more authentic self on the internet.
Sounds kind of like wearing a mask or a costume or something.
Yeah. I can dig it. And this just happened? Or was
I think she did this like years ago, like a couple of years ago, like even before all this. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's compelling. I can dig it. How many years ago? Do you know or no? Just out of curiosity.
I don't know. I'll have to look it up. Probably not too long ago, but
yeah. That's
I can't remember when it was, but I remember it. I'm trying to Google it, but it looks like I might need more. Might take me some more time. I'll put it in the chat.
Oh, cool. That could make dating online a little more fun.
Yeah.
That could make you feel a little more vulnerable, a little more free.
Yeah. You don't have that like physical awkwardness.
Yeah.
It's like a totally separate form of intimacy, like, or I don't know, not separate, but just it's a new way of being intimate that we're all like really exploring right now. I think we often think of these like, you know, my cousin is here and she's in 5th grade and she's, you know, doing e-learning. And, you know, all these meetings that we're going to are all online. We're going to therapy online, you know, some things are being taken online. And sometimes we think of it as temporary, that like e-learning is temporary and the goal is to go back to school in person. But maybe like I've been thinking about like, well, what are the benefits of e-learning? You know, obviously it's really hard right now. I think a lot of people do prefer in-person learning, but there's also so many possibilities that it opens up. Suddenly, you don't have to be in a school district to go to school. Suddenly, you know, you could be in a class at an elite college with, you know, without having to pay full tuition, you know, et cetera, et cetera. There's like so many, you don't have to like be in a specific city at a specific time to go to school. You could have these like globalized schools. There's so many like possibilities, I think, to be explored, rather than this just being this like temporary horrible thing that we're all forced to do.
Yeah, I can appreciate that perspective, because I mean I relate to that perspective, and that I feel like it's solution oriented. Like, oh, like what is this moment, right? Like what, you know, this is what it is at the moment. You know, students aren't going to class. You know, I think about those who are like K through 12. You know, these are kids. I have two younger siblings, and I asked my little sister, she started 8th grade, you know, like, how is it going for you? How are you feeling? You know, if she wishes she could be at, you know, her junior high and do that whole thing. But in general, you know, I think she has like 3 hours a day. I'm not sure exactly what her day-to-day schedule is like, but I think that potentially there could be upsides, some of the upsides that you were just speaking on. I think it's important to use what's presently happening and hopefully making it work for the betterment of us, you know, trying to find that if there is even one. So yes. Do either of you have kids, Ken or Laura?
Yeah, I have 14-year-old boy-girl twins.
Oh, fun. So how are they adjusting, if they are adjusting?
I mean, they're just starting high school, and so they just, I mean, it's no different than finishing 8th grade at this point, really. It's slightly harder work, and it, you know, a new batch of friends, and they have some friends that are still going with them to the new school, but you know, other than that, it's, you know, but there's not a whole lot in the way of friends right now. You know, you don't get to like, you know, we were asking them, hey, is there anybody that you met online that you really like, that you could, you know, once you get into school, you could really hang out with? And they're like, well, it's not like we can talk during class. You can't lean over and, hey, what do you think about what's going on? So you're just sitting there and you just see, you know, heads like we do right now. But yeah, so it's a whole, I think the social part for that is the toughest part.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Yeah.
I don't have kids, but I had a really interesting experience because one of my great friends who I've known for a long time had her first child right before the shutdown. So this boy was born like very beginning or like mid-March. And because of the shutdown, I didn't get to meet him as early as I would have liked, but I saw him for the first time this month in September. But it was such an interesting and sad, bittersweet experience because since I've been around mainly adults and mainly other English speakers, you know, communication, you know, through screens or on the phone or whatever has, you know, been fine substitution for in-person contact. But it was so interesting to reflect that I couldn't really communicate with a baby because he doesn't understand language. And I wasn't really able, you know, just trying to be safe, I wasn't really able to physically touch him, and I was trying to respect the space. So it made me reflect a lot on that kind of like what is communicated through the body without, you know, verbal language or written communication, and how with this newborn, or like, you know, if it's a child that's a year old, that so much is communicated through physical touch.
Mm-hmm. Are any of you working on series, or are these pieces for the show? Were they singular pieces?
Not necessarily a series, but just more like that's a, you know, what you've seen in the show. What my piece in the show is similar to a lot of the other stuff. I'm trying to move. I'm thinking about moving into more three-dimensional stuff.
Oh, nice.
But that's essentially. I mean, they're not all about home, but you know, there's some other. They're similar.
That's beautiful. Do you all feel like, you know, as artists, you know, in this moment, do you feel like your work is going to shift in relation to what's happening in the present moment? Yeah, that's the question. I'm just curious. And no is an awesome answer. Just throwing that out there, you know.
Mine's gotten a bit more political at times. So it's gotten a bit more political at times, depending on what has been tweeted that day.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think more about documentation, how the piece is presented. If people cannot experience this physically, then at the very beginning, I'm already thinking about how people interact with this over the internet. Especially like, I think I am working on a series. It's kind of unfolding as I work on it. It's sort of like images that I find really capturing, really fascinating, and that like capture my attention. And sort of, to me, painting is a process of extreme deep observation where I truly like dive into an image so deeply, and I learn so much through the painting process. So this was sort of the first one. Right now I'm working on an image of this apartment building burning in Minneapolis. I think we all maybe said it's like a very popular image, but it just captured me so much. And as I'm working on it, as I'm painting it, there's things that are like coming alive in it that I can't even explain. Like I was FaceTiming with my friend and I showed her, and she said like, it looks like there's like a demon in the flames.
Well, that's wild.
And sure enough, there was. And even in the original photograph, there's like a really clear face, like skeleton type figure in the flames. So just like, I don't know, I've been thinking a lot about like, everybody thinks about how many images we're bombarded with every day. So what does it mean to like observe an image closely now?
Yeah.
What about you, Jessica?
Me?
Is this a series?
I mean, I'm pretty much in the paper on canvas series, and I was just thinking today that I'm literally looking at my film camera. Like I haven't gone out to shoot in so long, because like I moved. You know, moving is always this like thing, and then with the air quality. But I want and need to go out and shoot. I'm finishing up a piece right now. It's laying on my bed. The canvas is laying on my bed, but I want to use the black and white images that I'm shooting on this camera for the piece after the one that I'm working on. And in terms of it being directly politically involved with what's going on right now, I would say that it indirectly is, because I'm thinking about histories and landscapes in this country. So, you know, and the ingrained thing of history within the land of this country. So yes, I would say that this series is in conversation with the present moment. So yeah. And I really want to see this image of this fire and like demon situation. Like, I'm actually being serious. I will Instagram you. Like, I want to see.
Yeah.
Like, meditate before I see it.
Sounds like life imitates Photoshop.
What'd you say?
Life imitates Photoshop.
It really does. I mean, I think this is something I think about, is like, reality is a million times more absurd than anything we could ever imagine ourselves. And I mean, sometimes that's super tragic, sometimes it's super beautiful, but it's, I don't know, impressive or something above all.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe COVID is like, this is like so stupid. Please forgive me for saying this, but maybe this moment is like a push for us to be really good at simulating reality. If we like ascribe to simulation theory or whatever, but
I can dig it. And that wasn't stupid. Wasn't stupid.
I don't want to be that simulation theory bro, you know.
Yeah, just go with the flow. I can dig it. What about you, Laura?
Yeah, so this piece, I haven't really conceived of it as part of a series, but I've definitely moved into a phase of doing a lot of text-based images. So it kind of is like this loose series. But for me, I don't know if my work, I don't know, I guess to me it feels like I need more time to reflect on where the changes are happening in my work. My first reaction was no, kind of, but I think I've actually felt freer in my work, which is kind of surprising. And I felt actually very, very busy, because I think just like my reaction through my work, and I think I've always kind of had this throughout my life, but it feels like, oh, it's my job just to bear witness to what's going on around me and the stories I'm hearing from people. So I've always felt that, but like when the stories are not changing, but it's like these rapidly changing world situations, it's felt like some days I can't, like I'm just writing a ton or producing a ton or just having to take in so much information just to make sure I'm doing like the job I feel I'm called to do, or whatever my work should be, or what I can give back through my work. So that's been interesting. I think like the endurance of what I can take in, what I can produce, and just hoping that I'm catching what I can as it's speeding along.
Yeah, I feel that. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
At least I can feel at most with the conversation of like being bombarded with stuff.
Yeah.
Before this virus, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Before that, there's still just culturally with technology, it's like you're bombarded with what feels like a million things. And sometimes it's hard to like catch it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think that it was probably not healthy, but it was also called for at the time. I think that first week in June, like right as the George Floyd protests were going on, I think there unfortunately was a day I spent 8 hours on my phone and was just screenshotting like everything I could see and notes, and like trying to find firsthand accounts. And it was interesting because, you know, how different things were in different geographies, like you were talking about landscape. You know, there's so much unification, but then the way things were playing out in different locations was so varied. So it's like impossible. Like I couldn't possibly understand how things were emerging in different places. So, and finding out there's protests in Paris that were sparked, you know, it's just, it's too much for any one person, but it's also, I think, you know, what we can capture, what we're interested to capture, what we're called to witness is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really relate to that as like a role of an artist is to bear witness to things. And I think one thing artists have in common is that they're really good observers and they're really attuned, they're really sensitive to the whatever feelings, emotions, visuals, you know, audio, etc. But our role is, I see my role as like to like reframe, like I'm a camera almost, but my tools maybe are like varied, but is to like, sometimes I'll see something that's so beautiful or so tragic or so amazing, and all I want to do is call attention to that thing. And Laura, I was going to say, I feel like it's interesting, you're like primarily a writer, you say, and your piece really feels like poetry. It's like a form of poetry. And Kenneth as well, like this text, it's almost like a new form of poetry. Like, you know, when people started to get away from prose and start paying attention to how letters and words are positioned on a page, it's almost like the next step of that would be like, we'll add some drawings to it, add some paintings to it, but it's still in its essence like a poem. And I feel like a lot of my paintings are honestly just a poem or like a love letter to something or someone.
Are you writing anything right now, Laura?
Yeah, I've been working on a novel and just trying to, without even like really intentionally, just writing a lot of things I observe each day or things in the news, just kind of trying to capture what I can. And it's been interesting at times because I guess, I mean, I think, yeah, I'm curious how all of you would respond as well, where it's like in this very specifically kind of framed historical moment, how much of something feels kind of, for me, I like think of it as almost like a journalistic role, or that kind of connection of like, oh, there's very real kind of events that we're responding to, but then the creative act too, or like you, Neena, you were saying like the poetic, you know, it doesn't have to be this like completely documentary experience, but I think so much of what people are producing is obviously just very tied into a documenting process. And especially Jessica, you're going out and photographing things, right? So you're, no matter what, you're capturing the time through your camera.
Yeah. Yes. And you know, I think documenting is so important. You know, like I think of all the archival photos that we see of all these historical and historical moments and how necessary they are and how they allow us to be present, but they also allow us to move forward, hopefully in a direction that's better, if that makes sense. But what was the question that you posed, Laura, for all of us? I think I missed it.
I guess I'm interested, yeah, just in your own words or like your own experience with what's kind of like that question of documentation. I mean, that you're transforming something in a creative form, and it's, you know, it's not like this heavy realism, but and Ken, with your piece, it's interesting too, because you were literally taking something from a documentary that you watched. So it's something that someone physically, or like you heard them say, that was documented. I'm just curious what everyone's relationship to that, or if that's changed in your work, that kind of like realism or documenting quality.
can I add a layer to it?
Yeah.
I'm so interested if the documenting is only outwards or if it's also inwards, or how that relates to what you're doing during the pandemic and the documenting. Because I don't know, I subscribe to this idea that anything that we do is some type of documentation of something.
Yeah.
So like just thinking, if you're like doodling or something, there's the residue, and so that's kind of like this documentation of what you were thinking, even though it's not like I was thinking these words.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it's more filtering, because I will, you know, find stuff online or something I'm watching, or just, you know, on the news, or just thinking about my day or whatever, and then jotting. I have notebooks that I just jot words or phrases or sentences down, and you know, I guess you could say I'm holding up a mirror to what I've taken in. But if I'm the filter that it's coming through, then whether I'm conscious of it or not, then part of it is me. I'm choosing what goes through that filter and what goes on the board. So
Yeah, it's
so
true.
Neena, Neena, yours seem to definitely be a very specific document.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know what it's documenting, I guess. Yeah, just this space, this feeling I get when I'm in the space and what the space means to me. And having that documentation leave like possibilities open for the future, like for like other possible renditions of that space.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the powerful part. You know what I mean? Like what you just said, like I think back to, I can't think of names but I can see the work like when I was like in graduate school, when I was in class, and just like when I've been in galleries, you know, a few years ago, like seeing those artists from like the 70s, because I think that was the time period, but seeing those moments that they documented, to me that's wildly powerful to see them doing whatever it is they were doing, if it was a set performance or or if it was just performative by nature. Like it's to me it's something worth viewing, and it's something worth documenting. I think there's a lot of truth in those spaces that will resonate for years and years and years and years, regardless of what conversation it's in. So, sorry.
No, I'm sorry. It's a time capsule. Like our work really is a time capsule, and as artists, we're time travelers.
Absolutely.
Like this, each one of our pieces is almost like a little time capsule that we made and kind of like buried under the sand. Not physically, but and then it's brought out, like Nicole, through your exhibition or whatever future viewings you might have. Like we bring it out, and each time this time capsule means something totally different.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, some of my work I feel like it's like almost like a letter to my future self. Or like I'll look back on my old artwork and I'll like realize that, I don't know, I almost like feel that I'm like psychic somehow. Like as artists, we are really good at like folding time. That like a work I maybe made 5 years ago is like so just, I don't know, like a conversation that I had maybe like last week would like have informed that piece, if that makes any sense at all. Like the future informs my like past work. Yeah. And like in a way, these works of art are like wormholes. Like, I don't know, like how you like fold time. Yeah.
I can dig it.
That's like a form of connection too, I guess.
It is. It's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah. In a way, this is a form of time traveling. The fact that the five of us are on the Zoom call right now, it's almost like we like have all these little wormholes through from wherever we are, whatever time zone we're in.
Mm-hmm. They are like wormholes, but they are all, it is all connected. Like we are connected. And we're like finding like, it's like this amazing mind map. And the mind map is all connected with our beautiful individuality and the conversations that we're in and our beautiful individual work. But it's all like intermingled in this way that allows us to continue to function. So, I don't know. It's just necessary. And I'm so glad, like, this show, like, it really, it allows us to give breath to our work in a moment where doors are closed because of the stay-at-home order. You know what I mean? Like most galleries, some galleries are open, but it's just a whole different moment. And like, in terms of like, how are we going to navigate this moment safely, productively? But I'm just thankful that our pieces get to inhale and exhale in a variety of ways. Like that's, you know, it's an honor. I mean, every time it's an honor. Because I mean, isn't that like what we want? Isn't that what we want our work to do? To be able to inhale and exhale in a variety of spaces with a variety of people, and they will inhale and exhale it in the individual ways that they do. And then they'll live. Your work will live in a variety of spaces. You know? I don't know. Isn't that the dream? So.
Yeah.
It's a dream that, I mean, not the dream, but yeah, I mean, I think as artists, because I'm also an artist, that's what we want. We want to connect with people in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And now, like all of you guys have mentioned, it's we're in these portals here, and I think back to, I think I got Skype when it first came out in 2005, and how it was like trying to get people to actually, they need a camera, and then whatever, and then who would have thought that actually 15 years later we would be in class and in meetings and doing work all via Skype or Zoom or WhatsApp or Facebook or all the many different applications that are out there.
Pretty amazing to me how quickly everybody adapted in like March. Like I'd never heard of Zoom before, and within 2 weeks, everybody was on Zoom constantly. And as a teacher, kids were getting on there, and I started making my art lessons as YouTube videos for the end of last school year, and now I'm doing stuff more live in person in this kind of a setting for art classes. So, and just especially kids, they're able to pick it up pretty quickly, but just everybody got really creative and just adapted.
Yeah, I think most people did, and the people who weren't able to, unfortunately, then it becomes this whole, like separation between access and no access. And sometimes it's about the ability to adapt, and sometimes it's about the money that you have and the resources you already have. And sometimes the ability to adapt is about those resources that you have or don't have.
It's been interesting to see like in this moment, this greater discussion of like, is internet is like a human right? Or is that like, should that be something that is just like a public utility, or is it free? Like how we can distribute or like just create the greatest access for as many people. Because yeah, obviously, you know, if you don't have a device, then how do you access all of these things?
I just thought about there's this like Trevor Paglen piece where he, I guess, like scuba dived down into the ocean, in like the Atlantic Ocean, and he found these like the actual physical fiberglass wires that like connect our internet, which when I saw that at first, my first thought was like, I had no idea that there are actual wires under the ocean that connect me to someone in London. I don't know, we sort of assume that it's like through satellites or just through space or whatever, but no, they're like actual, just like huge tubes that run the entire length of the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean, and sometimes sharks will attack them and try to eat them. And they have to like try to prevent these sharks from like severing our internet connection. So it's just funny that like really we have been laying the foundations for this moment for so long. Like Nicole, you said, we have been adapting for so long. It's almost like we did have to do a lot of adaptation at the beginning of March, you know. We've sort of like been preparing for this for years. Like those coils were already laid down. We all had cameras. We all, like, not all of us, but you know, like this like grid was set up already. And I'm really fascinated by those like physical manifestations of our connections with each other. It reminds me, Laura, of your piece too.
Yeah, the idea of the network is pretty interesting, like in any way you want to take that word. I like what you're like, I think it's important, like in Trevor's piece, that it's like there is a real physicality to these things too. It's so abstract for us, but there are like, you know, server banks physically that are stored places and need very specific temperature control. And yeah, just how much, yeah, I guess, yeah, it's just like today now with technology, the idea of the network is something that we deal with so much, but how, I mean, there's networks, if that's what we want to call them, in ecosystems, or the virus has brought up like, you know, like contact tracing too, like where are those points of connection and meeting, and like how things spread.
Yeah, I'm really, and especially with your piece, Laura, that actually has those physical droplets, and really thinking about the physicality of connection. And connection that we're not, it's not, I mean, like we know it's there, but we don't really think about it all the time. So I am the keeper of time. 5 to 8. But I'd like to give each of you kind of some time to, or a moment to reflect on the discussion, or on your piece, or on the pieces together, or life.
For me, I'm just appreciative because the thing is actively happening. The connection is actively happening between us. And to me, you know, I saw connection, quote unquote, or I see it as an action point. And, you know, I'm glad that ultimately, I'm glad that we can have that connection through action, through conversations, through learning about one another, through connecting our pieces. Because to me, like it is a fantastic conversation piece. It's deep and it's wide. And we're able to really move within it and find that, you know, we are connected innately, whether we know it or not. And I'm really thankful that I'm just thankful to find that, to experience that, to explore that with these other artists. So.
Definitely also very grateful for this, and I really enjoyed this whole conversation about the connections and you know the especially like a lot of this technology, like how this in front of us is I'm kind of thinking about how it's we were talking earlier about the connection, the personal connection versus the electronic, and how these skills and these moments have always been there, but we don't really act differently. This technology has just given us new ways to either be wonderful to each other and connect, or to new ways to be horrible. So, but I think that it's been really nice to have a chance to make these connections and talk through it and learn a little bit from each other.
Yeah, thank you all so much for sharing your work. Thank you, Nicole, for organizing this. This really like gives me so much hope for like potential online exhibitions, and I think this is like a huge success. Like even just this panel was really interesting. Like, and we had definitely something totally different than like I feel connected to you all in a totally different way than like an in-person exhibition. It's this discussion and this exhibition and the connection theme has gotten my mind wheels turning a lot. I feel inspired to make more work about it too. I'm excited to see what you all get up to too. And now we're all connected on social media.
Yeah, and I love just with talking about documenting and history and time that I'm thankful that we have this document now. I love it, and it'd be interesting to maybe listen to this in 3 years and see just, these were the things that we were thinking about and talking about, and what we got and maybe what we were totally missing at the same point. So I'll be very curious.
Yeah, like I think Neena, you were saying like the time capsule. It's not only the work, but also our thoughts, where we are, how we're connecting. Yeah, because this is a big time for us, for the country, for the world, for everything. I want to thank each of you. I want to thank Ken and Jessica and Laura and Neena for being here, for sharing your time, your work, yourselves with me and with those people who have connected on Facebook or later will watch this as an archive on YouTube. It's been a really wonderful time meeting you and learning more about your work and listening to you guys talk to one another. I think that's been kind of a really cool thing, I think, with all the conversations, especially with this one with connection. And we got into something that we didn't get into at all in the prep, which was this documentation, which coming from a photo background is really, it's always kind of there for me. So to let everyone know, the exhibition is online until October 3rd. And then I will pull it down, but then I'll archive it and it'll go up again in a different way. So like I said, this is the third in a series of 5. Next week we will do artisan conversation for those who are part of the in-between essence of the exhibition. And then on Saturday the 3rd, good night, my love. My son's going to bed. On Saturday the 3rd in the afternoon, we'll have our closing panel. And so those will be from artists from different, whose work was put into different sections. On Saturday the 20th at 1 o'clock, there will be a performative, participatory performance by actress Andrea Nusch. So if you go, you can sign up via either my Calendly, which is Nick R. Rad, or if you go to the exhibition site, you can click and sign up there to participate, or you can tune in on Facebook Live. I want to remind everybody that Kayla Tang and company are doing the takeover of Acogedor.space right now on Instagram. And then on Thursday, Luciana Veit will do it for 4 days. And we have some other artists there. And, you know, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And lastly, before we close out, I want to remind everybody who in the United States who can vote to vote. If you're or if you can't vote, you don't live here, or you're a visitor, or like my husband, you're on a green card, encourage everybody you know to vote. This is of utmost importance that we get out there, and so that what people really want and need is counted. If nobody else has any last comments, okay, we'll say goodbye to Facebook. Bye, Facebook.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.